Get ready to be inspired as we introduce talk number 4, Unmasking Imposter Syndrome to Cultivate Joy, by the dynamic Yvonne Castaneda. The daughter of Mexican and Cuban immigrants, Yvonne Castaneda am I pronouncing that right? Castaneda is a Massachusetts licensed mental health clinician, the director of community-based initiatives, and an adjunct professor at the BC School of Social Work. She earned a Bachelor of Arts in International Relations from FIU in Miami. I went there too. And a Master of Social Work from Boston College, where she was a proud member of the Latinx Leadership Initiative. Yvonne is a trauma-focused therapist certified in EMDR. She's worked primarily with Latino individuals, couples, and families to help them navigate relational conflict and improve overall mental and emotional health. In addition to her private practice, Yvonne regularly facilitates mental health and empowerment workshops for adults yearning to better understand themselves and their loved ones, both in Massachusetts and across the nation. She serves on the board of directors for 2 Boston-based nonprofit organizations, North Suffolk Community Services and Doc Wayne, and she is the contributing writer for Psychology Today. In 2022, she released a memoir, Pork Belly Tacos with a Side of Anxiety, which details her struggles with mental health, an eating disorder, and addiction. Currently, Yvonne is regularly sought out for public speaking opportunities and presents on a variety of mental health-related topics. Her engaging insights promise to unveil secrets of overcoming imposter syndrome and embracing joy in every aspect of our lives. Let's give a big round of applause for Yvonne Castaneda.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Hola, ¿cómo están? Good. I'm sorry, I don't have slides, so you're going to have to stare at my face the whole time. Okay? So thank you so much for that introduction. It's always odd to hear back the things that you've done, and I always think, God, I'm so tired. God, I've done a lot. And so I hold many hats. I'm the director of community-based initiatives. I'm a mental health clinician. I'm a writer, blah, blah. But to be honest with you, I'm a storyteller. At the end of the day, I am a storyteller. And what I'm going to do today is I'm going to tell you a series of stories, and I'm going to connect this to imposter syndrome and how it impacts so many of us in our community. And it starts with my father. You see, when I was 15 years old, my father gave me permission to attend my first ever big girl party, in which there would be alcohol. My brother came to my bedroom, and I was getting ready, and he said, Bibi, I'll wait for you in the car. Now, I was wearing what I thought was super racy, a mini skirt, a shoe with a heel, and mascara. Ooh la la, I thought I was out of control. I tried to sneak out of the house without my dad seeing me because I thought I was gonna get a lecture, so I was tiptoeing. And as soon as I made it and I put my hand on the doorknob, my father with his Cuban radar goes, Sst, and he calls me over. And I'm like, darn. So I come over, and my father says, Fíjate bien lo que te voy a decir. Now you listen to me. He said, I know that there's gonna be alcohol at that party. And so I'm not gonna tell you not to drink. Pero fíjate bien, I'm gonna ask you one favor. When you get to that party, I want you to find a guy that you are not at all attracted to. Vaya, un feíto. Take a good look at him, and then walk away. And I was like, okay, why? When that guy starts to look good to you, you need to come home. Papi was the master of this advice, these pockets of wisdom that he would throw out at me. But something that I love most about my dad is that he always said the same thing. It didn't matter. I could have like a broken arm. I could break up with a boyfriend, get into a fight with a friend, say something. And I would talk to Papi. Papi would listen, and he would offer me perspective and insight. And he'd go, oye, tranquila. Todo tiene solución. There's always a solution. But then he would get up and walk away, and he would never give me the solution. He would just say, todo tiene solución. Todo tiene solución. What I love about my father is that he would offer me perspective and insight and give me the space to figure out the solution for myself. And so as I embrace this monster topic of imposter syndrome, I am doing that with that framework. I am going to offer you perspective and insight. And maybe if you're somebody sitting in this audience today experiencing discomfort from imposter syndrome, then maybe you can find the solution for yourself. Now, because my immigrant parents did such a tremendous job of providing for me, I had a foundation on which I could stand and find the solutions to many of my challenges. But the one solution that I needed most, which is the solution to the mental health issues that I struggled with for most of my life, that were a cause or a consequence of imposter syndrome, was the solution that most eluded me. It's the one that I couldn't find. And the reason I couldn't find it is because it was deeply buried within the things that I experienced as a child growing up in an immigrant family in the United States. And these things greatly impacted my ability to show up authentically in every single space of my life. Now, having worked as a mental health clinician for many, many years now, and with the Latino population, it was incredible to me that I realized that my experiences were actually not unique. They were not unique to my family. What I came to understand is that many Latinos have experienced these same recurring themes, and that it impacts their ability to experience joy. You see, when I was 5 years old, I was playing on the living room floor of our home, and the doorbell rang, and Mommy comes running out of the bedroom, and she goes, Mija, tell Florita that I'm not home, and that I'll call her later. And I was like 5 years old, but I'm in Catholic school, and the nuns told me that if I lie, Jesus' hands are gonna bleed more, and we're all gonna go to hell, right? And before I had a chance to say anything, Mommy disappeared and left me with an epic moral dilemma. I didn't know what to do, so I walked over to the door and I opened it, and there was Florita with a cigarette in her hand. And she goes, hi, mija, tell your mom that I want to talk to her, ándale. And I looked at her and I goes, my mom told me to tell you that she's not home. And that she'll call you later, bye. And I slammed the door, and my mom came running out of the bedroom with a chancleta on fire. I'm like, that's it, I'm dying, I'm gonna die. And she, ay, hija de tu, why did you say that to her? And I was like, but mommy, I told her what you told me to tell her. She goes, no, ay, válgame Dios. And when she walked away, all she could say was, ay, ahora qué va a pensar? What is she gonna think? Let me tell you something. What will they think is something that I heard all of my life. My entire childhood into my adolescence. It was so pervasive, I heard it at every single moment. Not only that, my mother invented code switching. I'm pretty sure of it. My mother changed her behavior in so many different spaces and lied. Tell them that we can't go because your uncle died. Meanwhile, I didn't even have an uncle with us at the time. Always lying because she was protecting herself. She was so worried about what other people were gonna think. And what I learned, not what was taught, what I learned and what I gathered was that perceptions have a lot of power, regardless of their distance from the truth. And I put that little lesson in my pocket, and I began to live my life, of course. And then at 14 years old, I decided to get a job at Pizza Hut. My father was not opposed to me getting a job. In fact, for Cubans, work ethic is everything. I remember my father once telling me, hard work is how we prove that we belong here. And so my father sat me down for my first day at Pizza Hut, and he said, fíjate bien lo que te voy a decir, because that's how we always started. He said, let me tell you something. He goes, don't complain. Don't ask for more money. Don't buck authority. Mira, respeto. Just put your head down and work hard and don't say a word to anybody. And just do your job. That's it. And that is exactly what I did. Is I sliced pizza and refilled the salad bar for a few years. And I never said anything. Even when I probably felt like I should, I said nothing because I had to be respectful of authority. Now, I'm getting older now, and now I'm in college. And I chose a degree, international relations, because I was really curious about the world. If I had a penny for every time somebody asked me, how are you going to make money with that? I would indeed have a lot of money right now, right? I was constantly asked, not just by my external family members, but my family as well. Pero mija, ven acá, how are you going to make money with that? What are you going to do, right? Every single thing I wanted to do, the first question was never, how are you going to be happy? Is that what you really want to do? It was always, y ven acá, y el dinero, how much money are you going to make? And how are you going to survive on that? And what if you can't make money? And it was money and money and money. And so what I learned was that money trumps fulfillment. That's it. I had to choose something that was going to make a lot of money. And because my parents were immigrants and really didn't know what was available to me, and because mommy watched telenovelas nonstop, my only options were doctor, attorney, dentist, nurse, anything that they were familiar with. And lastly, I grew up in a household where I was repeatedly reminded of all the ways in which things could go wrong. Always, all the time. Bobby, I'm thinking about buying a car, and what if you can't pay for it? You know, I'm thinking about buying a house, but what if you can't pay for it? What if you fail? Not only that, mommy was obsessed with pointing out all the dangers on the street. If I walked out the door to go for a run, mommy would remind me that there was a guy in the bushes with a machete that was going to chop me to pieces, no doubt. Papi, of course, would be right behind her going, oye, you know, they say that if you run too much, your uterus is going to fall out. This is what I heard repeatedly over and over. So I was wired, right? I was wired constantly to look for danger. So what does all of this have to do with imposter syndrome? Absolutely nothing. I just love telling stories. No, I'm just kidding. It has a lot to do with imposter syndrome. I felt like an imposter because you know what the truth is? I was an imposter. No part of me showed up authentically ever in any space. Because you see, when you learn as a child, and you learn as a little kid that perceptions have power and that the adults in your environment are okay with lying, and you're constantly worried about what other people are going to think, guess what? It impacts every single space that you show up in. It impacts how you dress. It impacts how you express yourself. You're worried about what you're going to say, what you're going to do, because you're always cognizant of this invisible audience in your head that you need to please. When we are constantly told that we need to be respectful, and hey, don't get me wrong, I value respect, and I love respecting others. But when you're younger and you're told that you need to be respectful and not to say a word, usually what happens is that becomes blind obedience. And we respect people that do not deserve our respect. We say yes when we want to say no. We say no when we want to say yes. We say nothing when we should be screaming and calling attention to things, right? We sit across from the human resources person at this new job that we want to get, and they slide that salary over to us, and guess what happens? We don't ask for more money. We just try to be grateful because we're repeatedly told that we have to be grateful. Don't say anything, just be grateful, just take the money. And so we don't necessarily advocate, not for ourselves and not for others. And lastly, when we are wired to only consider money at every step of the way, we choose careers that maybe are not true to what we really want to do. And we go down a path to honor the sacrifices that our families make because we think that honoring their sacrifices means that we need to make a lot of money, right? We need to do that at all times. And so we choose things that are just not authentic for who we are. And all of these things have a terrible impact on our ability to embrace authenticity and to show up in the world, right? Now, what's interesting about this is I love my parents. I love my family. Nobody who is close to me could tell you that I have any kind of resentment for them. I love them to pieces. And the reason that I love them is because I was able to take some time and reflect and develop some understanding and some compassion for why I was raised the way that I was raised. And I was raised the way that I was raised because my parents had a very different experience than I've had. It's because of their circumstances and their sacrifices. I will never know what it's like to live in a country and fear being deported. I will never know that. And so I speak from a place of privilege. So I'm super grateful for my parents and everything that they instilled in me. I am also extremely grateful for all of the DEI efforts that we are seeing now in workspaces, especially up here in Boston, where it's taken very, very seriously. And I appreciate that a great deal. I think it is important that our workspaces are spaces in which we do feel comfortable, in which we can reveal our authentic selves. And I also think it's important that we ourselves do whatever work we need to do in order to show up authentically, because it's not the workspace that's going to help us feel better. The workspace is not going to help us conquer imposter syndrome. It's something that we need to do on our own. Now, I figured it out. I'm 52 years old, and I figured it out, right? Clearly, I'm not so afraid of perceptions because I'm standing on a stage speaking openly about mental health in a bright orange dress and very loud shoes. So I am over it. But it took me a lot of time. It took work for me. And so what I'm going to leave you is this. Now, what's interesting to me, or what I loved, is the title of this presentation, which actually I think, Nadie, you came up with it. And the word, well, you added to it, the word that stood out for me was cultivate. And I thought, well, it seems appropriate to leave you with this little story. Now, Papi was a Guajiro. If you don't know what a Guajiro is a farmer, right? Papi loved going. He could turn any flat space into a magical garden in 2 minutes. He had a tremendous green thumb. And so quite a few years back, I decided that I would give my hand, I would give it a try, and plant something and see what would happen. So I went to the front yard, and I cleared out a space, and I planted like a whole mess of hydrangea bushes and other plants that I can't tell you the name of because I'm not a gardener. So I planted all these things, and of course, I ignored Papi. I didn't do what he told me to do, which was to make sure that I managed the garden and that I clean it up at all times. I kind of forgot about it, and I got busy. And a few months later, when I go out and I look at this patch of the garden, guess what? overrun, lots of weeds. There was one hydrangea bush in particular that looked like it was just dying, and it was overrun with weeds. There were weeds all the way around it, and I felt terrible. I felt like I'd murdered a hydrangea bush. So I put on the gloves, and I got down on my knees, and I yanked out all the weeds, and it took me some time. I yanked out all the weeds, and then when I did that, I noticed that the other hydrangea bushes, too, had some weeds going on, so I yanked them, too. And I cleared the entire space, and I was exhausted. But a few weeks later, when I'm looking at this garden, I noticed that not only is the hydrangea bush that was overrun with weeds, it is now thriving. It is now blossoming. It is blooming. It looks beautiful. And then even more miraculously to me, all of the other plants, too, seem to come to life. And that lesson was not lost on me. So now if you are someone who is struggling with imposter syndrome, who maybe feels the impact on their mental health, I'm going to leave you with 3 things to consider. The first thing is, maybe identify the weeds. Maybe you identify which weeds are holding you back from revealing your true, authentic self, the self that maybe you got detached from a long time ago. I know myself disappeared every single time I heard, ¿Qué van a pensar? ¿Qué van a pensar? So identify whatever it is that's holding you back. And also develop some understanding and some compassion. You want to understand, why is it that these weeds grew in the same soil in which I was planted? So you develop understanding, awareness, and then number 2, you can't be what you can't see. You can't embrace that which is hidden. You have to put some gloves on. You need to get down on your knees, and you need to get to work on those weeds. You have to yank them yourself. Your workplace is not going to yank them for you. Even your therapist, if you have one, they're not going to yank them for you either. These are things that you need to identify for yourself and remove them so that you can fully see really who you really are without these weeds and embrace that part of you, because I truly believe that when we do that, you're able to see the value and the purpose that you have for the world. And number 3, and this is the most important, y'all, pay attention. Number 3, don't just keep it to yourself. Let's share. I think, and I have witnessed this, is it possible, just like my garden, that once you remove what limits you, and you're able to show up in spaces fully authentic and feeling good about who you are, it inevitably makes an impact on your workplace. It's going to make an impact on the people in your own garden, the people that surround you. And maybe when you do that, it gives them the power. They feel empowered to then do the same. If you share with them the weeds that you yanked, they might look at you and say, dang, I have the same one. How did you do it? And we have conversation. And this is what I believe we definitely need in order to truly come together and to thrive and to blossom and to take our community way further than it's ever been. And if you happen to encounter some obstacles on this road of self-discovery, and you have challenges with some of the weeds, and it's getting difficult, then I'll leave you with this one thing to remember. Todo tiene solución. There's always a solution. My name is Yvonne Castaneda. Thank you so much.